a song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, here with another song from their debut album, Shades of Deep Purple. Today we're talking about the song One More Rainy Day, written by Jon Lord and Rod Evans. And this one kicks off with a little bit of a sound effect, as we talked about earlier on in the season. And had a great time with Corey yesterday. Much longer episode than most of these will be. I'm figuring like around a half hour, 20 to 30 minutes for most of them. But when we have a guest and there's a lot of history to go into and a lot of stuff. Plus we had a double song. So much longer episode than the majority of them will be, but we'll see how they go. Because you know what? I can only say, here's what I'm anticipating. The show is very young. It may morph and grow as time goes on. Speaking of morphing and growing, I did decide not to go ahead and put the email address on the website because I have a feeling that's where a lot of my spam email is coming from. So I decided not to do that as a test. I may add that down the line, but for now, you guys can just email me. And then also, I changed the Instagram around a little bit because I thought, if I keep doing band podcasts, which I very may well do, I'm going to run out of available Instagram pages because I think you only get 5. And I've already got a couple up there. So I consolidated everything down to Scott Haskin Podcasts. The Uriah Heep page still exists for now, but the Haskin Cast podcast and Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast will be posted under Scott Haskin Podcast. I've also changed my mental sauna to Scott Haskin Books and Music because, again, it just kind of makes more sense to have everything under more consolidated banners. So that should be a good time. Anyway, let's get to today's song. And it does, like I said, it starts out with a bit of a sound effect like so many of these songs have. Well, 2 out of the 3 we've done so far anyway. And here it is, One More Rainy Day. So there we get 17 seconds of thunderstorm before any music kicks in. That's a little bit long, but I kind of feel like Hush was a little bit long too with the 3 wolf howls. I think they could have done 2 and it would have been okay. But they've chose 3. And then of course we have 17 seconds of thunderstorm here. Again, maybe a little bit excessive, but things were crazy back then. I mean, you've got young kids who are incredible musicians, but who knows who decided to put the sound effects and stuff in there. They might not have even known about that until the album came out or they heard the masters. Who knows? There's really no documentation or anything on that, but it's an interesting concept to have the sound effects. Anyway, though, the music is cool. It's just very simple, just da-da-da-da-da-da-da, very simple. But again, I'm trying to get in my 1968 brain, even though that was before I was born, and just try to think about, how fresh would something like this have been at the time? And I really don't know. So all I can do is say it's simple, but I like it. It feels good. And I like the way that they just go into, long chord after that as they get ready for the vocals. It's a pretty nice transition, actually. And again, there's something, a little element of like, I'm climbing up the hill and I got there and I feel triumphant. And now I'm going to sing a song. That's just how I'm feeling the music. I've always felt that way. It's just kind of an uplifting little melody.
Changes invisible changes, sky looking so forlorn. It looks like the world being born on one more rainy day. Trying to see the sunlight, my heart's crying out loud. I try to see through the clouds on one more rainy day.
The way that Rod's singing this and the lyrics themselves really just kind of expand on that optimism for me. That's what I'm getting out of the song anyway. And maybe again, it's because I know the song so well, it's very possible that I just kind of read that into the music. But it feels good. It's just got that, I'm going to see through this. I'm doing everything I can to get past the darkness kind of feel. I also just like the pitches that they chose for this, because the way that Rod's changing the notes on vocals, it just has, again, that hint of optimism to it. And I love the doubling in his voice. He sounds really good harmonizing himself. Not every singer does. The ones in Deep Purple do, though, so it's okay. But yeah, it just feels good, this song.
One more rainy day. Once again, my mind is gray. This is what a rainy day can do. One more rainy day. One more rainy day. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.
Boy, listen to how great Nicky's bass sound. It sounds really heavy. For those days, they had some way, I don't know if it's just the way they EQ'd it or the way they recorded it, but when I listened to a lot of songs, a lot of the Motown songs, a lot of stuff that was recording by the Wrecking Crew, there's just something about the way the bass cuts through in a lot of those records. And it's what we're hearing here. It's very heavy, deep sounding bass, but you're not getting a lot of low end overtone. You're really getting the attack of the bass, and that adds a lot to it. And that's really part of Nicky's sound on these albums. And I really like that.
Sun starts shining on through. You world, my world with you. It's strange what sun can do on one more rainy day. One more rainy day. Once again, my mind is gray. This is what a rainy day can do. One more rainy day. One more rainy day. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.
Now, Tetragrammaton did release this song as the B-side of the Hush 45. And, because these songs are short enough, this is only 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I don't think they had to trim it at all. But it's a good song. It's, I could see that working on the flip side of Hush, because Hush is just a real, upbeat dance song. And this is just, a more mellow song, but it has a good feel to it. Something that just kind of, could warm you up depending on your mood. But I like the concept again, just here's what the sun can do on a rainy day. I think that's really cool. And it's certainly a choice. I like that he's kind of just taking control of it and saying, I'm going to see past this. But it's very common for people to get depressed on rainy days because they get reflective. It's, a quiet day. They don't want to go outside. And there's just that thumping of the rain on the window. And people a lot of times get reflective, and it's, gray skies, and they just kind of, start thinking about things a little bit too much. And I think that's one of the reasons people don't like rainy days. For me, I love them. I love that since I've moved to Tulsa, I've had far more overcast days than sunny ones, because for me, I just eat that up. And I just keep doing what I do regardless of what the weather is. It doesn't really change my mood or what I accomplish in a day. but it's certainly more enjoyable to, look out the window and see that because, I think clouds are interesting anyway. And it's nice to, after all those years of living in the desert, to not just have the bright damn sun smacking me in the face as soon as I pull back the curtain. Anyway, let's get back to the song. One thing that's really interesting to me is that there's no solo in this song. Even where you would expect that Richie might do some flourishes like he was doing in Hush, he just plays his rhythm a little bit louder or they bump it up in the mix, one of the two. Same with Nick Zimper. There's just a little bit more bass at a couple of those points where there was room for a flourish. So it's kind of surprising there's really nothing there. The only person that's really playing their instruments a little more aggressively is Ian Pace because he's got a lot of colorful drum fills. But other than that, I mean, even the vocals are pretty subdued. They're very straightforward. They're sort of on the mark. There's not a lot of variation in where he starts and stops. It's pretty much, on the beat. So it's a very straightforward song for a band that would go on to do the kind of things that they do. And interesting that you've got like Richie just playing rhythm on the song and not really trying to cut through much at all. So good song though. I really enjoy it. It's just kind of surprising when you think about this and even where the band is on this album, as we just heard on Hush. Kind of surprising that they didn't go a little bit further. And the song, I would say, if they did try and cut it down for the radio, which I really don't think they did, but if they tried to, what would you take out? I mean, it's just verse and chorus, really. So if you took out the second verse, then you're way chorus heavy. If you take out a little bit of the chorus, you might get a little bit more balance, but it's going to be a little bit awkward because you've really just got the first two verses next to each other, and then the third one comes in later. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I'd want to touch the song, and I think it's short enough to where even at 3:40, I think it's radio playable. There's just really, I don't think much to trim down unless you want to trim down some of the chorus or maybe the ending because it is just really repetitive. But other than that, yeah, it's a cool song. I think they did a pretty good job mixing it. I probably, I always yearn for a little bit more kick drum, especially when you've got a heavier bass. It's the kick drum's there, it's present, but I hear it, I don't really feel it. And I kind of want to feel it hit my chest a little bit. When we saw Deep Purple in August of 2024 in Detroit, I really thought I was going to crack a rib because that kick drum was cutting through the PA system so hard. And when we went to Chicago the next night, it wasn't as loud in the system, but it still had a good punch to it. I still felt it, as well as heard it. And that's kind of what I want here. I mean, it doesn't have to be that loud for this song because I don't think this song warrants it, but I would like to have it a little bit more punchy and cut through in the mix a little bit more to kind of balance the bass a little bit better. That's kind of nitpicking. Again, we talked about how quickly this album was recorded and mixed on the And the Address episode. So it's kind of understandable. I would love to get the masters. Depending on what the masters have to offer, they may very well not be separate tracks anymore. So I don't know if they're even available or what the configuration is of them. But overall, I think this is a cool song. It's one I don't mind listening to at all. It's not one I very often go, I really want to hear One More Rainy Day. That doesn't happen very often. But if I'm listening to Shades of Deep Purple and I've listened to And the Address and Hush, I'm happy to listen to this song. I have no urge to shuffle past it by any means. It's just not a go-to for me. And I think that's okay because it's enjoyable as it is. So short episode today, guys, because short's long. And there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. What is today's Thursday? So get ready for Friday's episode and your weekend ahead. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Cheers. for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode and thanks for listening.